a Catholic cardinal sent to investigate Jimmy Cliff's Rastafarian influence, ended up converting to Jah worship and shocking the Vatican forever. It was September 14, 1976, in Kingston, Jamaica. Cardinal Michael O'Brien, one of the most powerful men in the Catholic Church, had arrived on what the Vatican called a pastoral mission to the Caribbean. But his real purpose was far more secretive and controversial than any official church document revealed. Cardinal O'Brien had been personally dispatched by Pope Paul VI to investigate what Vatican intelligence services were calling the Rastafarian threat, a growing spiritual movement that was challenging Catholic dominance throughout the Caribbean and attracting millions of young people worldwide through reggae music, particularly the songs of Jimmy Cliff. The 58-year-old cardinal was the perfect choice for this sensitive mission. Born in Dublin, Ireland, he had spent 30 years rising through the Catholic hierarchy, serving as a missionary in Africa, a theologian in Rome, and most recently, as the Archbishop of Boston. He was known throughout the Church as an uncompromising defender of Catholic orthodoxy, and a brilliant scholar who could dismantle any heretical movement through superior theological argument. What made Cardinal O'Brien's mission particularly urgent was the Vatican's growing concern about Jimmy Cliff's influence on Catholic youth. Church officials had received reports from priests around the world, describing young Catholics abandoning Mass to attend reggae concerts, questioning papal authority after listening to songs about Babylon system oppression, and some even adopting Rastafarian beliefs about Haile Selassie being the returned Christ. This Rastafarian movement represents the most dangerous challenge to Catholic authority since the Protestant Reformation. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger had warned during a secret Vatican meeting 6 months earlier, "Their music is converting our young people faster than we can counter it through traditional catechism. We need our best theological mind to expose the heretical nature of their beliefs before this infection spreads further." Cardinal O'Brien's mission had 3 objectives. First, to thoroughly document Rastafarian beliefs and practices. Second, to identify the theological weaknesses that could be exploited to discredit the movement. And third, to personally confront Jimmy Cliff and convince him to stop promoting what the Vatican considered dangerous religious propaganda. The cardinal had spent months preparing for this assignment. He had studied every available text on Rastafarianism, analyzed the lyrics of Jimmy Cliff's songs for heretical content, and developed what he believed were irrefutable arguments proving that Rastafarian beliefs contradicted both Christian scripture and rational theology. But nothing in his preparation had equipped him for what happened when he actually encountered Jimmy Cliff and experienced Rastafarian spirituality firsthand. The meeting was arranged through intermediaries who told Jimmy that a prominent religious leader wanted to learn about Rastafarian beliefs. Jimmy, always willing to share Jah's message with anyone genuinely seeking spiritual truth, agreed to meet with the cardinal at a private residence in the hills above Kingston. When Cardinal O'Brien arrived at the modest house on the evening of September 16th, he was struck by the peaceful atmosphere that seemed to surround the property. Despite his skeptical mindset, he found himself unusually calm as he walked up the path lined with indigenous plants and flowers that seemed to glow in the setting sun. Jimmy Cliff was waiting on the veranda, dressed in simple white clothing that seemed to radiate serenity. When he stood to greet the cardinal, his dreadlocks catching the light like a natural crown, Cardinal O'Brien felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of religious service, the immediate presence of genuine spiritual authority. "Welcome, brethren," Jimmy said, using the Rastafarian term for brother. "Jah has brought you here for a reason. Please, sit and reason with I." Cardinal O'Brien had expected to encounter what he assumed would be a charismatic, but ultimately deluded musician promoting heretical beliefs. Instead, he found himself in the presence of someone whose spiritual depth and authentic holiness were undeniable, even to his highly trained theological consciousness. "Mr. Cliff," Cardinal O'Brien began, reverting to his formal ecclesiastical manner, "I have come to understand your religious beliefs, and to discuss some concerns about their theological foundations." Jimmy smiled gently. "Brother, call me Jimmy. And I, man, don't have religious beliefs. I, man, have spiritual knowing. Rastafari is not a religion like the systems of Babylon. It is the recognition of Jah living within I and within all creation." For the next 4 hours, Jimmy patiently explained Rastafarian theology to the cardinal. But this wasn't an academic discussion. It was a spiritual initiation that began to crack open Cardinal O'Brien's carefully constructed worldview. Jimmy spoke about Jah as the living God who dwells within every human being, not as a distant deity requiring institutional mediation. He explained how Haile Selassie represented the Christ consciousness returning to earth through African spirituality, reclaiming the divine heritage that had been stolen by European colonialism and religious imperialism. The Catholic Church teaches people that God is far away in heaven, reached only through priests and sacraments, Jimmy explained. But Rastafari reveals that Jah lives in your heart right now. You don't need no pope or cathedral or ritual to connect with divine love. You just need to recognize the I Am that lives within you. Cardinal O'Brien tried to counter with traditional Catholic arguments about the necessity of church authority, the unique role of Christ as mediator, and the dangers of individual spiritual interpretation. But every theological point he raised seemed to dissolve in the face of Jimmy's profound spiritual presence and the undeniable truth of what he was experiencing. As the evening progressed, Jimmy began to sing softly, not performing, but channeling spiritual energy through music that seemed to come from someplace beyond human creativity. When he sang Many Rivers to Cross, the Cardinal felt something break open in his chest that had been locked away for 30 years of religious service. Many rivers to cross, but I can't seem to find my way over. The words hit Cardinal O'Brien with devastating clarity. He realized that he had spent decades trying to cross the rivers that separated him from genuine spiritual connection, but the very religious system he served had been preventing him from reaching the other side. The Catholic Church, with its elaborate hierarchies and institutional barriers, had become the river he couldn't cross rather than the bridge to divine truth. For the first time since his ordination, Cardinal O'Brien began to cry, not the controlled tears of religious emotion he had experienced during Mass or prayer, but the deep, body-shaking sobs of a man who was finally admitting to himself that everything he had believed about God and spirituality was incomplete. Jimmy continued singing, his voice carrying frequencies that seemed to dissolve the Cardinal's psychological defenses and religious conditioning. As Many Rivers to Cross reached its climax, Cardinal O'Brien experienced what he could only describe as a direct encounter with divine presence, not mediated through ritual or institution, but immediate, personal, and overwhelming. I can feel Jah, Cardinal O'Brien whispered, his voice breaking with amazement. For 30 years I've been teaching people about God, and I never actually felt the living presence until this moment. Jimmy nodded with compassion. That is the difference between religion and spirituality. Brethren, religion talks about God. Rastafari connects you with Jah directly. Over the following 3 days, Cardinal O'Brien remained in Kingston, not continuing his investigation as planned, but undergoing the most profound spiritual transformation of his life. Jimmy introduced him to other Rastafarian elders who shared their understanding of biblical prophecy, African spirituality, and the cosmic significance of marijuana as a sacrament for expanding consciousness. The Cardinal was particularly moved by the Rastafarian interpretation of biblical passages that he had read thousands of times, but never truly understood. When Elder Marcus Garvey Jr. explained how the Book of Revelation's prophecies about Babylon's fall referred to the collapse of oppressive religious and political systems, Cardinal O'Brien realized that the Catholic Church itself might be part of the Babylon system that needed to be transcended. We've been teaching people to worship the cross instead of living the Christ consciousness, Cardinal O'Brien admitted during a reasoning session on his 3rd day in Jamaica. We've created an institution that separates people from God instead of connecting them with divine love. The transformation became complete when Jimmy invited Cardinal O'Brien to participate in a Nyabinghi ceremony, a sacred Rastafarian ritual involving drumming, chanting, and the sacramental use of ganja to achieve spiritual communion with Jah. Cardinal O'Brien had never used marijuana in his life, and had preached countless sermons condemning drug use. But when Jimmy explained that ganja was a sacred herb mentioned in biblical passages about healing plants, and that its use in spiritual context was fundamentally different from recreational drug abuse, the Cardinal felt called to experience this aspect of Rastafarian practice. The ceremony took place in a natural amphitheater in the Blue Mountains, surrounded by dozens of Rastafarian brethren and sistren who welcomed the Catholic cardinal as a genuine seeker of truth. As the drums began their ancient rhythms and the sacred herb was blessed and shared, Cardinal O'Brien entered states of consciousness that revealed dimensions of spiritual reality he had never imagined possible. During the height of the ceremony, as Jimmy led the gathering in chanting Jah Rastafari, Cardinal O'Brien experienced what he later described as a direct vision of divine truth. He saw the interconnectedness of all religious traditions, the artificial nature of institutional boundaries, and the cosmic purpose of the Rastafarian movement in preparing humanity for a new age of spiritual consciousness. In that moment of revelation, Cardinal Michael O'Brien ceased to exist as a Catholic Church official and was reborn as a servant of Jah, committed to spreading the message of Rastafarian spirituality throughout the world. The Vatican became concerned when Cardinal O'Brien failed to report in as scheduled and didn't return to Rome as planned. When Vatican intelligence finally located him a week later, they were shocked to discover that their senior cardinal had grown dreadlocks, was wearing Rastafarian colors, and was living in a commune with Jimmy Cliff and other Rastafarian elders. Archbishop Pietro Sambi was dispatched to Kingston with orders to bring Cardinal O'Brien back to Rome immediately. When he arrived at the Rastafarian compound where the cardinal was staying, he found a man who was virtually unrecognizable from the rigid ecclesiastical official who had left Vatican City 3 weeks earlier. Michael, Archbishop Sambi said, using the cardinal's first name to emphasize their personal relationship, "What has happened to you? The Holy Father is deeply concerned about your spiritual welfare." Cardinal O'Brien, now calling himself Brother Michael Jah Love, smiled with a peace that radiated from his entire being. "Pietro, I have found what we've been searching for our whole lives. I found direct connection with the living God. Jah has revealed the truth that our institution has been hiding from the people." When Archbishop Sambi demanded that Cardinal O'Brien return to his duties in Rome, the cardinal's response shocked the Catholic official to his core. "I cannot serve an institution that separates people from God," Cardinal O'Brien declared. "The Catholic Church has become part of Babylon's system, using religion to control people instead of liberating their spirits. I have found my true calling as a servant of Jah, spreading the message of Rastafari to all who have ears to hear." The scandal that erupted when news of Cardinal O'Brien's conversion reached Rome was unprecedented in modern Catholic Church history. Vatican officials initially tried to suppress the story, claiming the cardinal was suffering from a mental breakdown brought on by tropical diseases and psychological stress. But Cardinal O'Brien held a press conference in Kingston, attended by international media, where he publicly renounced his Catholic positions and proclaimed his conversion to Rastafarianism. Standing beside Jimmy Cliff, wearing traditional Rastafarian clothing and speaking with the authority of genuine spiritual conviction, he delivered a statement that sent shockwaves throughout the global religious community. "For 30 years, I served an institution that I believed was bringing people closer to God," Cardinal O'Brien announced. "But through the grace of Jah and the spiritual guidance of His Majesty Haile Selassie, revealed through the blessed musical ministry of Jimmy Cliff, I have discovered that true spirituality requires no institutional mediation. Jah lives within each of us, and Rastafari shows us how to recognize and honor that divine presence." The cardinal's conversion created a crisis of faith for thousands of Catholics worldwide who had respected his theological scholarship and spiritual authority. If someone of his stature and learning could abandon Catholicism for Rastafarianism, what did that say about the validity of Catholic teachings? The Vatican's response was swift and severe. Pope Paul VI officially defrocked Cardinal O'Brien, stripping him of all ecclesiastical titles and declaring his conversion a sign of mental instability rather than spiritual insight. The Church launched a campaign to discredit both the former cardinal and Rastafarianism, describing the movement as a dangerous cult that used drugs and music to brainwash vulnerable individuals. But the damage to Catholic authority was already done. Young Catholics around the world, who had been questioning their faith, found validation in Cardinal O'Brien's transformation. If a cardinal could find deeper truth in Rastafarianism, perhaps their own spiritual doubts about Catholic teachings were justified. Brother Michael Jah Love, as the former cardinal now called himself, spent the remaining years of his life traveling the world with Jimmy Cliff, sharing Rastafarian teachings and helping establish Rastafarian communities in dozens of countries. His theological training, combined with his authentic spiritual conversion, made him one of the most effective missionaries Rastafarianism had ever produced. He wrote several books comparing Catholic and Rastafarian theology, demonstrating how Rastafarian beliefs represented a return to the original spiritual truths that institutional Christianity had corrupted over centuries of political compromise and imperial expansion. When Brother Michael Jah Love died in 1994, his funeral in Kingston was attended by thousands of Rastafarians from around the world, as well as many Catholics who had been influenced by his spiritual journey. Jimmy Cliff delivered the eulogy, describing the former Cardinal as proof that Jah's love could reach anyone, regardless of their religious background or institutional position. Brother Michael showed the world that spiritual truth is stronger than religious dogma, Jimmy said at the funeral. He crossed the river from Babylon system to Zion consciousness, and his example helped thousands of other people find their way to Jah. The Vatican never officially acknowledged the impact of Cardinal O'Brien's conversion, but internal church documents later revealed that his defection prompted major reforms in Catholic missionary strategy and a more respectful approach to indigenous and alternative spiritual traditions. Today, the story of Cardinal O'Brien's transformation is taught in comparative religion courses as an example of how authentic spiritual experience can transcend institutional boundaries and challenge established religious authority. Rastafarian communities worldwide celebrate September 16th as Jah Love Day, in honor of the night a Catholic cardinal discovered that the living God dwells not in Rome's golden palaces, but in the humble hearts of those who seek truth with genuine humility. Jimmy Cliff continued to view Brother Michael's conversion as one of the most important validations of Rastafarian spirituality, proving that Jah's message could reach even the most unlikely hearts when delivered with love, patience, and authentic spiritual power. The former Cardinal's journey from Vatican authority to Rastafarian servant remains one of the most dramatic religious conversions in modern history, demonstrating that no institutional position or theological training can substitute for direct, personal encounter with divine truth, and that sometimes the most profound spiritual revelations come through the most unexpected messengers. If this incredible story of spiritual transformation and religious courage moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more amazing tales of how authentic spirituality can transcend any institutional boundary. Share this video with someone who believes that truth is stronger than tradition and that divine love recognizes no religious borders. Have you ever experienced a spiritual awakening that challenged everything you previously believed? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out our other videos about the moments when faith becomes bigger than the institutions that try to contain it.